All right, this lesson is on the interface of After Effects, the different tools and palettes and windows that you have available to you, and how they function relative to the animation that you have. Okay, so to get all of these palettes open, if yours isn't by default like this, or if you accidentally move windows around and you don't want them to be a different way, you can just go into Window, Workspace, and say Reset Standard and hit yes. And it'll put everything back and it'll look like this. Okay. Now, the first palette we're going to go over is the tools palette. Here you have different tools like to select things, to zoom in, to draw with shapes, pen, text tool, erase, clone, different options that we have here. And as you select these, you get different options along the way. So if I hit the type tool, for instance, I get different options here. And then also these palettes change along the way. Okay, so those are your tools, and we're going to go over these as we need them in other videos. All right, and then we have the project palette. Okay, and the project palette is, there's no real equivalent in other programs, but the closest thing is kind of like a layers palette in that it holds things, but it's not quite the layers palette. If you were creating a play on the stage, you might have a bin that keeps props in it. This is kind of like your prop bin. So if you ever need an image, or if you ever need a video, or if you ever need sound, this is where it's stored. And you'll notice that we have different categories like this, different folders. Now, I'm going to give you a template that has this organization structure, but you're going to be responsible for importing images, importing audio, anything that you select that you're going to use, and then filing it away in here and naming it properly so that it's cleanly organized, okay? But basically, the audio folder will contain your audio file, your graphics folder will contain your graphics assets, your images, and your videos, and you are responsible for filing them in here. Now, the other thing that's in here is this composition. Now, composition is where you composite all of the different assets that you have to make a visual animation. It's different images, text, sound put together to create a whole, and it goes through several seconds or however many minutes you have it set to. Okay, so that's your composition, and that composition shows up here. This is kind of like your stage, okay, or on Photoshop, kind of like your canvas, except for you have the ability to see different things animating, so it's not just one stationary canvas. Okay, so this is your composition, and this is how you access that composition. Okay, and there could be several of these in one project. This is your entire project here, the project named I Led Garcia Proj 3 Final AEP. And there could be multiples of these, but for our project, because it is short, we're only going to have one of these. Okay, now these compositions and what you see here is all dictated by what's in the timeline here. This is your timeline. Your timeline, now here's where you get closer to what is layers. The different layers here are stacked, and you have different items that you can turn off and on. And right now I'm turning these off and you can't tell what I'm turning off, but that's because they're not all visible at the same time. In a timeline, you can have something that's visible at the very beginning. That's what's visible here. And then if we move down, this is what's visible at this point in time. And then if we move down, this is what's visible at this point in time and what's visible at this point in time. Okay, so we can turn these off so you can see what might be disappearing. If there's nothing there, you won't see it if that layer isn't visible at that point. But the texture, that's what changes the color of this, okay? That's just an image with a blend mode, similar to like Photoshop. You can add blend modes in here. And then you have the video. This is the video that's actually moving. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and turn all of these on. You can also lock layers. There'll come a point where you start moving things you don't want to move, so you can lock and unlock layers. Okay. And here's where you can have your different layer names. You can rename layers. You can right click and then rename it something else. Okay. You can expand these here, so it gives you different options here of blending modes where one image interacts with another one, or one video interacts with the one beneath it. Okay. You can collapse it because it can get kind of busy in here and very cumbersome. And there's another one that you can just the in and out, the duration, so you can control the timing a little bit more. Okay. And then in layers, you also have the ability to open these up and see kind of the options that you have. And this is actually where you animate. where you make something scale or make something rotate, or you position it at a different location. It gets very complex as you start noticing these can be very, very robust. So I'm going to teach you some tips and tricks on how not to access all of these things if you don't want to see them. Okay, but that's in a different video. We'll go ahead and close these up. Okay, so we have this scrubber here. We call this the scrubbing on the timeline. Okay, this is the time. This is what tells you the duration of things, and it's set in frames. We work by frames. So a certain amount of frames, like 30 frames, are in 1 second. So every 30 frames, you've got about 1 second of time. So at around 60, around right here, you would have 2 seconds of time. At 90, you would have 3 seconds of time. And you can scrub the timeline. You can just click here and kind of hold down and drag it across to see what you're viewing here in the animation. Okay? So you can scrub across it, but then you also have the ability to go over here and preview what you're playing. And return it back. Okay. So other things we can do is if you want to kind of zoom into the timeline and you want to more accurately make the duration of something shorter or longer, you can also grow this so that you can really see, you know, where is, if we go here, you can see exactly where is 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames. And then at approximately 30 frames, around 29.97 or something like that, here, that would be 1 second of time. Okay, so you can grow this and you can shrink this. Okay. I like to shrink it. I like to see the whole duration. This is the entire 30 seconds that I have of animation here. Okay. And then you can also, if you wanted to zoom into this or zoom out of it to view things closer, or more detail, or view things further, you can zoom out to 50%, or you can zoom into, you know, 1600 so you can really see the detail. Well, it gets pixelated. The regular size that your image is actually going to look is when you magnify only to 100%. Okay, but sometimes you need to grow an image or make it rotate, and you can't find the edges of the image because it's really large. And in that case, you might want to zoom out significantly. Click here and go to 3.1, and now you can see the edges of the images or videos that are being used in here. Okay, all right, I'm going to go ahead and zoom back into 100. Okay. Now, there are other features here that we could use along the way, and if they're relevant, I will be covering them in the particular video that they pertain to. Okay? All right, this concludes your lesson on the interface of After Effects. If you have any questions, please be sure to contact me.